Okay, so there is a little story going around the internet where an Office Depot uh, employee refused to print some posters of Charlie Kirk for a vigil that they were getting ready to hold. Now, I've looked into this and did some research, and AG Scam Blondie went on Fox. Are we surprised? And was telling them that employers have an obligation to get rid of people who are saying horrible things. Yeah, not really, unless there's a caveat, unless they are calling for violence or actions to violence. Okay, so in the case of calling against violence towards Charlie Kirk supporters, MAGA supporters, Christians, blacks, Jews, gays, and he calls it to violence against people, that is different. Okay, that is in legal terms called intent. Okay, thought precedes the action. You can't just go. There's no such thing as just going and doing something without first thinking about it. Okay, even if it's a split second before you do it, you've still thought about it prior to doing it. So calling for violence and action is intent, and that is different. Okay, but calling people horrible names and scum-sucking, villainous whatevers, unpolite, not kind at all, but not hate speech. Okay, there's no such thing as hate speech. Okay, because hate speech is very subjective. For example, calling a transvestite a sin against God and nature and an abomination. Okay, a transvestite would take offense to that because they would consider it hate speech. Okay, now calling Christian the same thing would be just as subjective. Okay, a Christian could take offense to calling them weird and what have you. Okay, those are very subjective. So that's the difference. Hate speech is subjective. Sorry, hate speech is subjective. Okay, intent and calls for violence is not subjective. Okay, calling for somebody to be exterminated, beat up, what have you, is not subjective. Okay, there is intent behind it regardless of who it is. Okay, that's different. Now, I've looked into this, like I said, this Office Depot thing, and the right to refusal is very narrow in scope. Okay, a public business like Office Depot does not have the opportunity or the legal ramifications, or there's no law to protect them to refuse to do business with a given individual. Okay, unless they are a private members only club or something, then there is slightly broader definitions to allow them to discriminate against businesses. Okay, so if you are a public business like Office Depot is, you have to agree to their business. Okay, or you as the business have to agree to accept that. Okay, you can't refuse that. So there's that. So if you see this thing on Sean Hannity, whatever, where she's saying businesses have an obligation to take that business, she is correct on that. But employers have no obligation to get rid of people saying horrible things. Okay, calling people scum-sucking, villainous leeches, that there's no law that says you have to fire somebody because of that. That is up to the employer. Okay, it's not going to win you any friends or business. So there's a business reason to get rid of them. But as far as I can see, there is no law that says you have to fire somebody because they say mean things. Okay? So free speech on that one. That one's fully covered under free speech. Saying mean things, sorry, it's mean, but suck it. Okay. So then the other thing that she goes over is, again, goes into this free speech versus hate speech. And this is a direct quote from her. There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now after what happened to Charlie in our society, will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech. Okay? Now, like I said, there is no hate speech. There is unkind speech, and there is speech with intent to harm. Okay? Speech with intent to harm is calling for violence, physical action, or something that is illegal to do. Okay? Again, calling somebody names, calling somebody a fascist, a dictator, a Nazi, or whatever, while unkind and not very ethical in certain instances, is not hate speech. Okay? There is no hate speech. There's unkind and unethical, but if you are, like I said, if you're calling for somebody to get harmed or to discriminate against them, against the Civil Rights Act or something like that, okay, if you say, I can't accept you because you're MAGA and whatever, that's discrimination, and discrimination is protected under the Civil Rights Act. Okay? So unless there is calls to violence, you cannot prosecute people for that. Okay? And I've looked, like I said, I've looked into this. It is covered under the First Amendment. Okay? You might not agree with what they're saying. You might not agree that they're calling you fascist, dictator, Nazi, what have you, but you cannot prosecute them for that. That is protected. What's not protected is calls to violence and physical and bodily harm. That is not protected. That is not free speech. So, just to be clear, anyway, that's my thoughts on the matter. As far as I disagree with AG Pam Bondi on so many things, she is right to say that Office Depot has to accept business, but she is absolutely way out of bounds with this whole hate speech rhetoric. Absolutely. 100% thoroughly wrong. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the matter. Until next time, that's it. That's all. There is no more.